Hey, welcome to GVN Interviews. My name is Mike Vaughn, and I am really excited because today we have Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead talking about their fantastic new film, Something in the Dirt. And now that comes out November 4th. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
That's correct. November
Glad I
4th.
got that right. Yeah, well, first of all, again, fantastic movie. Loved it. It was definitely one of those movies I had to watch a few times.
Good.
And I still don't know if I quite understand it.
I think if you finish that movie and say, I've solved all the mysteries of the movie, we haven't done our job exactly right. But it is still satisfying to watch, right? Like it's not like, oh man, just an open-ended bit of nonsense. Hopefully not that.
No, it was like very intriguing. It was interesting because when I was taking my notes, I wrote down this sort of felt like Darren Aronofsky meets Coen Brothers.
Oh, that's a huge compliment, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're huge Coen Brothers fans. Something that's interesting to know, I still haven't seen Pie.
Okay.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it. I'm gonna, now that we're completely done with this movie, we're gonna watch it. We had a joke while we were shooting that we were calling the movie Pineapple Express because it's a kind of a stoner comedy. And apparently it's a little bit like Pie. Yeah, still haven't seen it. Still haven't seen it.
But actually, also with Coen Brothers, the Big Lebowski was a bit of an inspiration too, kind of a whimsical journey into the underbelly of Los Angeles. There's kind of an occult feel to the whole thing, and we didn't realize it until after the script was written. We're like, oh yeah, there's something like the Big Lebowski here. But that was obviously that's one of the greatest movies of all time, whereas we have just made a fun little indie movie.
Yeah, well, again, like I said, watched it twice, enjoyed it, maybe even more so the second time, just that I could now since I knew what was going on, I could dig into it a little bit deeper. I was kind of curious, would you say this film is kind of a satire of like true crime documentaries or just documentaries in general?
That's an interesting way of putting it. It's funny because we never behind the scenes, we never said let's make a satire of Netflix true crime documentaries, but there was a lot of discussions about in the world of this movie, there's always some fictional character making this movie. And there was constantly a question of how good of a filmmaker is this person? Mm-hmm. That authorship obviously shifts a lot throughout the movie. But if you just take Aaron's character, John, for example, who at times, if you assume his authorship, how good of a filmmaker is John? Because we love Errol Morris. If we're to make a documentary, we're aiming for that. Mm-hmm. But John, with his best efforts, if he were aiming for that, he wouldn't be able to achieve it. So there's a lot of weird discussions like that, sort of the meta layers of the movie.
Yeah, it's really interesting because on my second viewing, I could already tell that there was a lot of attention to detail, but like, how the one character sort of films things or handles things versus the other one, like everything is just so different. And again, you can really tell that it's like beautifully thought out as far as like how each individual character even sort of films things or like contextualizes what's happening.
Yeah, it's a really good observation, actually. Like who's filming what, communicating that.
Yeah. There's it would change so much throughout the film, of course, and also in kind of a literal way. There were definitely scenes where while we were shooting, we were thinking, wait, hang on, is this John, or is this are we in spoilers? Sorry, are we talking about it as if people have seen it or not?
We can put a spoiler warning. That's fine.
Well, let's not, because it is a spoilable movie, and I'd rather people just read this, But the idea of you've seen the poster that they made with the wonderful like kind of eyeball trick in it. The idea of exactly who's watching, who's making, whose voice is being seen was changing almost. Well, definitely there was scene by scene, but also shot by shot. the timeline of the movie, in the movie inside the movie, the timeline of it probably looks a bit more like if someone tried to make a timeline of Primer than you would think.
Mm.
There's things where you're like, wait, when must that have been filmed? You know, like, wait, how did they do that? Where is he? But you only can have those thoughts after having seen the movie.
Yeah. Again, it's like really fascinating because it's just one of those movies that it's just it's a little like Lost Highway, where if you try to really figure it out, your brain might fry, but you still enjoy trying to do it anyways.
Oh man, you know what's so interesting about Lost Highway is I remember watching that movie as a kid and being like, I have no idea what happened. All I know is some of those scenes are the scariest things I've seen in my whole life. And then once you've seen several other David Lynch movies, namely like if you've seen Mulholland Drive and you've seen all 3 seasons of Twin Peaks, you can start to decipher Lost Highway in a more literal way. Not totally. There's still, obviously, it's Lynch, it's dreamlike. You're not supposed to get all of it. A lot of it's a feeling. It's supposed to be dreamlike. But it's so interesting how Lost Highway, you can, over time of watching more of his material, have a more literal interpretation of it than you might have otherwise.
Yeah,
It's very interesting.
Yeah, I feel like that's where you need to start when you're working on David Lynch, where it's just like you have like a baseline, so at least you've got like an A to B to C things to just grasp onto before you start even diving in. That's probably the most rewarding way that I've ever watched it.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I saw in some other interviews you guys were talking about how the seed of this movie was kind of at the height of the pandemic, but also the LA forest fires. So I was kind of curious, like how long from that initial planning did you actually like end up like starting to shoot the film?
I think it was probably something like 3 months into lockdown maybe even 2 months into lockdown, when we realized that the world was so significantly different. Because I don't know if you guys remember this, but because I even have to remind myself, but a lot, like in the beginning of the lockdown, a lot of us thought it was going to be like a week long. We thought that was going to be crazy. Like, oh my God, they might be talking about extending it to 2 weeks. That was where it all began. And so I think it was after a few months we were realizing that our old ways of making films might never exist again. We didn't know. Nobody knew anything. And we had to invent a new one. And so this was one where, you know, we're able to be COVID safe, pre-vaccine, and make a film. And then I think, I mean, from saying like we're going to make a movie to shooting was probably what, 3 months less.
Yes, it was something like that. It's interesting to note though that a lot of the ideas in the movie we had started working on in 2012.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting thing there where it's like, yeah, on the one hand, from deciding to do it to shooting it was maybe the shortest it's ever been for us, just long enough to feel like we got the script right, and to rehearsal is a huge thing for us, having time for that. Having time for our art department actually to also design and manufacture props. Did a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, they did.
Wow. And yeah, but ultimately it's weird because there are so many elements to the story that were actually worked on for over a decade. We just didn't know we were working on that movie. We didn't know we were working on this one. We thought it was for something else.
I mean, that's kind of amazing because like this is a movie that is very much tailored to like a COVID friendly, you know, thing. You have, it's mostly just you two. It's in maybe one location, maybe two, or just a handful of locations.
You know what's interesting? You're correct. You're correct that it's like, yeah, there's a chamber piece aspect to it. A lot of it does take place actually where we're sitting right now. But actually, there are obviously a lot of Los Angeles exteriors in it, and we probably had more access to those exteriors in Los Angeles than maybe we would have had if it weren't pandemic time. So not only were we inspired to figure out a way to make this movie here where we're sitting because of what was going on, it also allowed us to break out and give the movie scope and show off the Los Angeles in a unique way.
The movie cuts a great trailer where you realize it's not two people staring at each other in a room. You know, it feels way bigger than that, and the movie feels that way too. But the intent was always kind of how do we say it? We've been able to work on much larger budget things, and we realize that nobody really cares about that crowd scene. They just don't. It does not matter if you have 150. Nobody's like, wow, how did they do it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like that is not production value. That just adds cost without value. And we started kind of figuring out what actually tells a story on just a gigantic canvas, but isn't like this massively costly thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the really brilliant things in the film is that you know, it is very self-contained, but it also has a big scope. And I think, you know, you mentioned the LA history stuff, and I really think that is some really interesting elements to the film, and you know, something that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but I thought again made it sort of a richer experience.
Yeah, you know, something we talk about a lot is like the movie in terms of like an occult mythology based in Los Angeles. On the one hand, you know, it brings up obviously Jack Parsons, the Jet Propulsion Laboratories guy, who was also trying to some extent work with Aleister Crowley to get Thelema more well established here. Things like that, where it's like, yeah, that's real, that happened. The Aldous Huxley story in the movie is real. That happened.
There is like a floating doorway across from our apartment.
That exists. But we may have, with this movie, almost exhausted the extent to which esoteric occult things occurred in Los Angeles. Because the rest of it, most of the rest of the stuff in the movie is obviously completely invented. Los Angeles is a relatively young city, so it's a yeah. I'll put it this way. At one point, we were like considering like, what if we were to base Synchronic here? What would that look like? We didn't actually want to do it. It was just like, oh, the script's written for New Orleans. It's about time traveling into one specific location, and in that location, you have like layers of time, what the place would look like. And we're like, if we did that in Los Angeles, what would it be? And it's like, well, you know, like where we're sitting right now, it's just this building and desert dirt. Those are your two time periods. It's not like
that's it.
Not a whole lot. Not. It's again relatively young city. Not a lot to draw from in terms of finding esoteric occult stuff, but we found enough. And then I hope people don't think that
that there's actually a Pythagorean cult.
That there's actually a Pythagorean cult.
I mean, by the way, there might be.
Maybe
we don't know. What if we just did the, you know, broken clock strikes twice is correct twice a day, you know, and suddenly we're going to start getting some mysterious mail.
That could be a sequel. Yeah, no, it's funny. I had a friend that said like when my facial hair was a little different that I kind of looked like Jack Parsons. So I don't know. That's
I could see it. Yeah.
Maybe a relative, who knows?
That guy, there's so many. It's funny. There's so many interesting photographs of that guy where I don't know. You just don't expect people of that time period to be like that image conscious, you know, like that. But like you see, look at pictures of him and Marjorie Cameron, his widow, and you see pictures of them out together in bars in Los Angeles when they're all dressed up, like a cigarette in their hand. You're like, it doesn't even look real. Yeah. It's like
it looks like a fashion shoot.
Yes,
it looks like they showed up for a cool fashion shoot. Maybe that was just the 40s though. Everyone just looked awesome all the time.
So looks like I need to wrap up, but real quick, just wanted to know if there was any upcoming projects that y'all can talk about.
Nothing like specific, except we are also we have a small production company with our producing partner David Lawson called Rustic Films, which is the shirt that I'm wearing right now. And David Lawson is on his shirt. We really love Dave. And it was put together in order to basically find money for filmmakers that are struggling with doing so, and just give them money and then let them go do whatever they want. more or less, and we realized we just have a production method and some connections that can help get movies made that we can identify the voices. So we really want to put a lot of effort into Rustic. We have something like 10 films we're working on for next year. Dave is doing most of the legwork there. And then we're also working on a TV show that it's funny. It is way far down the pipeline. We're not yet pitching it, but it's here's the way to say it. I think it's Justin's best work by a long shot, and that's saying something. And hopefully, if all goes well, we're going to be spending something like the next 10 years of our lives working on it, and it would be a joy every day. It is a massive mission from God or the universe to get made. And I hope that it doesn't come out to 12% on Rotten Tomatoes and everyone's pulling out what I just said. But I just love it so much. So that's our next thing, is our own homegrown TV show.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. This was amazing. I've been such big fans of you guys for a while now, so thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Bye.
Could